Hello, my resistors. Peace and power. Welcome to another episode of Imam Isa Mateen and the Resistors. This show is for the resistors. It's not for the people who are brainwashed. You follow the media, you follow the status quo, you believe whatever you hear on the news, whatever you were taught by misinformed people. You're unable to open your mind. This show is not for you. This show is for people who resist the propaganda. Today, we're on part two of how to establish Islamic schools in America, not Muslim schools. A Muslim school, we said, is good, but it's like a public school with some Islamic classes. And it has not produced the type of people that we need to change and rescue America, and America needs to be rescued. We need a new type of teaching, a new type of students, and fortunately, it's not really new. Islam is not new. We believe only Islam, true Islam, can save America, and an Islamic school must produce those type of students. So part two, part one, we said the school must really truly be Islam centered or Quran centered. And we explained what that meant in part one. Part two, if you're talking about an Islamic school in America, that school must teach Black history. I don't care what the race of the students are. You must teach Black history because Black history is American history. And you must teach Black history before slavery. You must teach the real Black history, not the Black history you were taught. You must teach that Black people were in America before Columbus. We didn't all come over here on slave ships. We came over here as traders and explorers. Christopher Columbus was many things. He was a genocidal maniac, rapist, plunderer. But one thing he wasn't was a liar. And when Columbus came here, he wrote in his journals, and go look it up. He wrote in his journals that he saw Black people here. He saw Black people here, and he saw Muslims here. He saw masjids here. Columbus knew what masjids were because he came from Spain, and the Muslims had dominated Spain for over 600 years. So he knew what a masjid was. So he came here, he saw Black people, he saw Muslims. And there are artifacts here that show that many Black people are indigenous to this land. We didn't come here just as slaves. We were here before the Europeans. This is important. Why is it important? Black history. Because Black history is American history. And you will not understand America unless you understand white supremacy. Everything will confuse you. Who said that? Malcolm said that. Dr. Claude Anderson said that everything about America will confuse you if you don't understand the system of white supremacy and how Black people encountered it, Black people have fought it better than anyone else in the world. So you have to teach that whether the primary nationality or race of the students in your school are Black or not. And I'm going to tell you why. assuming that you have a school, Muslim school, excuse me, an Islamic school, you want it to be Islamic, not just Muslims. And let's say the students are Pakistani, Malaysian, Indonesian, whatever. There's racism amongst Muslims. Yeah, Islam doesn't teach racism, but there are many racist Muslims. One of the chief reasons of racism against black people is because you don't know our history. If you knew our history, you would have respect. You would have more respect. So, to end this racism, your students must learn real black history so that they can respect black people. And if your students are primarily black, or even you have some black students in your Islamic school, those black students need to know the real history of black people before slavery, our accomplishments, Mali, Timbuktu, centers of learning, Abu Bakri, who came before Mansa Musa and came and explored America, the Moors, the black Moors who ruled Spain for 600 years, brought science, architecture, rescued the Europeans from the Dark Ages, showed them how to wash, showed them, taught them to stop using urine to brush their teeth. All the Europeans would come to Mali, Timbuktu to learn, come to Spain to learn, Cordoba. They need to know our great history so that the self-esteem of black students can be raised and the self-esteem of black Muslim children can be raised. Because when they go to these government schools, they crush the self-esteem of our youth because they teach you almost like we don't matter. It's almost like we don't matter, like we've been written out of history. We've never accomplished anything. Everything was accomplished by everyone else. We just come from slaves. We're just a bunch of ex-slaves, and Martin Luther King came and everything is all right now. You see, this kills our self-esteem, and this is why it's so easy, in my opinion, this is why it's so easy for our youth to kill each other. Because they see another black person and they see nothing. They don't see anything. They don't see any lineage, any history, any accomplishments, any past greatness, any potential for future greatness. They look at each other almost like just nothing. They look at each other the way we've been taught to look at each other, as just the N word. So they have no problem killing another N word. So our children need to know the history, the real history of black people before slavery. Right? They need to know even black people enslaved white people at one time, right? Black people enslaved white people. All right, but that's another subject. So black history, real black history, must be taught. Otherwise, you're going to continue to see this divide, and it's a real divide between the indigenous black Muslims and the immigrant community. It's a real divide. This is the resistance. We speak the truth here. We don't sugarcoat anything. We speak the truth. There's a real divide. The immigrants come here, they don't have respect. They don't even want to mix with us. Most of them don't want to mix with us. And a lot of the immigrants don't learn that the reason can be in this country is because of the efforts of black people. Look up the Immigration Reform Act. I think it was 1965. Black people fought for that. Before the Immigration Reform Act, the main people who were allowed in the United States were Europeans. Very few other people, very few Africans, very few people. The main immigrants that were allowed here were Europeans. Black people fought in the streets for the Immigration Reform Act that allowed other foreigners to come to America because our people thought that the other immigrants, being this term people of color, which is a horrible term for many reasons, people of color, our people thought that these other people of color would come here and be our friends and be our brothers. But what we found is that what we see 50 years later is that they're not our friends, they're not our brothers, they don't want anything to do with us. So the immigrants, the people in the Muslim schools, Islamic schools, need to know things like that. They need to know that the reason they can be here today is because of Black people. Okay, so your school, your imam, you must know Black history. I always say that any imam who doesn't know the political teachings of Malcolm X, if you're an imam in America and you don't know the political teachings of Malcolm X, you are not fit to be an imam in America because you don't know what's going on. You are a fool and a tool. You are a fool and you are a tool. You will be used by the white racist power structure against Black people. For instance, I'll give you an example. Recently, there was an incident where one of the famous, sheikhs, and you know who they are. I won't say his name yet. One of the famous. A lot of you was there, And this was during the police brutality protest that was taking place a couple of years ago, just nationwide and even worldwide. There was an uproar against the brutality of many police departments, and rightfully so. So this sheikh, who knows so much Arabic, so many hadiths, he can run down 100 hadiths per second, right? So this famous sheikh was asked about, what about the police brutality? What about these protests that are taking place nationwide? And this famous sheikh took the side of the police. I should mention he's Caucasian. Right? He's Caucasian. And he took the side of the police against all of the people protesting. Islam has always been on the side of the oppressed people. Always. But this Caucasian imam took the side of Pharaoh. He took the side of Pharaoh. So that's what I mean when I say that if you don't know the political teachings of Malcolm X, you will be a tool. You'll be a tool of white supremacy. And if you don't know the history of Black people in America, you will not know and understand what is white supremacy. And you won't really understand what's happening in other places in the world. So resistors, that's part 2 of what is needed to make a school really Islamic. What is needed to make the school really Islamic, and it's missing in a lot of our schools. They're almost apolitical to a fault. And because they're apolitical, they don't know anything about the struggles of our people, which is America itself. They don't know anything about what Malcolm taught. And so the school, if it's not teaching about the oppressed and the oppressor, it's not Islamic. Islam has always been against oppression in all forms. So that's part 2, my resistors. Until later, peace and power.